Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your Sleepy Storyteller, pulling you down the rabbit hole of time where dreams and memories intertwine. If you enjoy these videos, please tap the like button. It really helps. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep drifting along on your sleepy journey through history. And before we wander down the rabbit hole, share your city and time in the comments. I love imagining our journey threading through every ticking clock. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable resting position. Close your eyes gently, and in your own time, allow yourself to sink into the quiet atmosphere of the past as we begin our slow journey together. Tonight, our walk takes us to the summer of 1863, through the fields and streets of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, just as the echoes of the Civil War thunder across the nation. Here, in this quiet town of rolling farmland and crossroads, history is preparing to change course. The armies of North and South are moving closer, and though the air is still for now, it hums with the tension of what is about to unfold. The evening settles softly across the Pennsylvania countryside. A warm breeze stirs the tall grasses, carrying with it the sweet scent of clover and the faint spice of wild mint. Fireflies flicker low over the fields, their tiny lanterns winking in and out of the growing twilight. I follow a dirt lane that winds gently along the edge of a wheat field, the stalks brushing together with a dry whisper each time the wind shifts. The horizon glows with the last rays of the sun, streaks of gold and rose stretching above the ridges of the Blue Mountains to the west. It is peaceful here, deceptively so. The chirr of crickets rises in steady chorus, and a lone whip-poor-will calls from somewhere near the hedgerows. The air is heavy with midsummer warmth, but it is not oppressive. Rather, it settles over the land like a blanket, stilling the restlessness of the day. My steps crunch softly against the packed earth of the lane, and for a while, I allow myself to imagine this place untouched by war. But Gettysburg is not untouched. Already, the roads leading in from the south and west carry signs of movement. Farmers whisper about columns of gray-coated soldiers marching north through the Shenandoah Valley, their ranks spilling across the Potomac like a rising tide. The rumors travel as swiftly as the summer wind, carried from farmhouse to tavern, from pulpit to shop front. Some speak with dread, others with defiance, but all feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down. The town itself lies ahead, its rooftops just visible now, above the orchards and fences. Gettysburg is not a grand city, but a modest crossroads community of a few thousand souls. Its life has long revolved around farming, trade, and the steady rhythm of seasons. Nestled among fertile fields, it is known more for its apples than for politics. Yet by fate of geography, Gettysburg stands at the meeting of 10 roads, and those roads will soon draw the armies of both Union and Confederacy straight into its heart. For now, though, the farms still breathe with their ordinary life. I pass a pasture where cows graze lazily, their tails flicking at the evening flies. A brook runs alongside the lane, its waters shallow and quick, tumbling over stones that have been here since long before the town's founding. The brook carries with it the scent of coolness, refreshing against the warmth of the night. And I pause to watch as a pair of swallows dart low over the surface, dipping for insects. The fields here are layered with history older than the war itself. Long before these farms took root, native peoples walked these same ridges and streams, their trails winding through the valleys. Later came the settlers, carving out homes, building fences, and planting crops in the fertile soil. By 1863, these farms have been tended for generations, the barns weathered by time, the orchards planted by grandfathers and still bearing fruit. It is difficult to imagine that such ordinary places could become the stage of extraordinary violence. And yet, even now, the signs of war are etched into the land. Many families in Gettysburg have sons serving in the Union Army, their letters carried home in trembling script, smudged with dust from distant camps. Widows wear black in quiet dignity, their grief visible in the dark folds of their clothing. The churchyards hold new graves, their markers simple, the names familiar to neighbors who pass them on Sunday mornings. I walk on, the lane narrowing as it draws nearer to town. Along the roadside, fences of split rail zigzag across the fields, their angles sharp against the fading light. Wildflowers grow thick at their bases. Queen Anne's lace, buttercups, and purple clover nodding gently in the breeze. These fences, so ordinary now, will soon become barriers in battle, places where soldiers take cover or where desperate skirmishes unfold. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, joined by the faint creak of a wagon wheel. The first houses of Gettysburg appear, modest two-story homes of brick and clapboard, their windows catching the last glow of the sunset. Smoke drifts from chimneys, carrying the comforting scent of wood and evening suppers. A woman closes her shutters carefully, pausing for a moment to glance down the lane as though expecting someone or something to arrive. I turn onto a quieter street where the cobblestones are uneven, worn by years of wagons and footsteps. The air here is filled with the mingled scents of fresh bread from a nearby bakery and the faint, earthy musk of horse stables. The evening bells of Christ Lutheran Church begin to toll, their notes steady and low, folding into the hush of twilight. The sound seems to gather the town into itself, marking not only the hour, but the fragile rhythm of daily life in uncertain times. Children play still in the yards, their laughter carrying lightly into the air, though even their games are edged with awareness. Some march with sticks over their shoulders, pretending to be soldiers, mimicking the drills they've watched older boys perform. Others chase fireflies with cupped hands, their joy momentarily untethered from the shadows that hang over the town. It is in these small moments that the soul of Gettysburg is revealed, not only as a place of impending battle, but as a community, alive with people who rise each morning to work, to worship, to live, despite the uncertainty of tomorrow. The courthouse square comes into view, its clock tower rising steady above the rooftops. Merchants have long since closed their shops for the evening, but the echoes of the day linger, the rumble of wagons delivering goods, the clatter of hooves on stone, the hum of conversations carried on porches and street corners. Tonight, the square is quieter, its lamps casting soft pools of light across the stones. Yet beneath this quiet beats a pulse of worry. Gettysburg sits at the edge of great currents, its roads leading north to Harrisburg and south to Baltimore and Washington. The people know that armies move along roads such as these, and they know too that war has no mercy for crossroads towns. Only weeks before, Confederate cavalry had probed the region, seizing supplies and leaving rumors in their wake. The memory of those riders lingers in conversations spoken in hushed tones, the way a farmer looks over his field, or the way a shopkeeper glances at the horizon before bolting his door. I move slowly past the square, pausing by a hitching post where a single lantern glows, its light casting long shadows across the ground. The lantern sways gently in the evening breeze as though uncertain, caught between steadiness and motion. It feels much like the town itself, rooted in place, yet braced for change that no one can quite predict. From here, the streets branch outward in every direction. Each road seems ordinary, yet each will soon carry the thunder of armies, shouting men, rumbling cannons, the endless rhythm of boots striking stone. For now, though, they lie still, lined with houses whose windows glow faintly with lamplight. Families gather inside, speaking in low tones, praying for safety, wondering how close the storm has come. As the night deepens, I walk back toward the edge of town, the sound of crickets returning to fill the silence. Overhead, the stars begin to emerge, their faint silver light stretching across the wide sky. It is a sky that soldiers, farmers, children, and widows all look upon together, each with their own hopes and fears. The stars shine steadily, indifferent to the struggles of men, and yet somehow comforting in their constancy. The air cools as I step again into the fields. The grasses whisper softly, bending with the breeze as though carrying secrets from the earth itself. Fireflies rise in clusters, their glow marking the boundary between the ordinary and the eternal. The quiet of nature continues here, even as the rumble of war approaches. Gettysburg, in the summer of 1863, is poised on the edge of transformation. Its homes, its fields, its people, all carry the weight of what is to come, though they cannot yet see the full measure of it. Tonight, as we walk through its streets and along its fields, we glimpse the fragile stillness before history unfolds. For the moment, it is enough to listen. To the brook murmuring through the pasture, to the crickets singing their endless song, to the faint toll of church bells in the twilight. These sounds, soft and unassuming, are the heartbeat of Gettysburg as it waits for the dawn of a battle that will shape the nation's future. And so, our first steps through Gettysburg come to a close. The night has gathered around us, the stars above steady, the earth below hushed. Tomorrow will bring new sounds, new stories, and the clash of armies that will forever mark this quiet town. But tonight, we rest in its stillness, walking gently through the folds of history, carried by the quiet rhythm of a land on the brink of change. Evening had settled like a shawl across my shoulders by the time my feet carried me beyond the gentle rise of Cemetery Ridge. The air had cooled, and the last whispers of sun clung stubbornly to the horizon. smudging the sky in shades of orange and violet. I could still see my own breath puffing faintly in the growing chill, though summer technically still held the land in its embrace. The crickets had begun their fiddling in earnest, a chorus rising from the grasses that lined the narrow dirt path. Each step I took felt deliberate, not hurried, as if the earth beneath my soles was reluctant to yield me forward, and instead asked me to pause, to linger, to look. Ahead, just off the road that wound east of town, the George Spangler farm appeared in the fading light. Its whitewashed walls were softened by shadow, its barn rising sturdily against the dimming sky. At first glance, it seemed like any other Pennsylvania farmstead, practical, neat, content in its modest labors. But I knew better. I knew what these fields would one day cradle, and that knowledge pressed upon me like a weight heavier than any knapsack a soldier might carry. The Spangler farm sat near the Union's right flank, positioned behind Cemetery Ridge, where the great blue line would anchor itself. On peaceful nights like this one, it whispered of crops and livestock, of family meals and Sabbath prayers. Yet in only a short while, so very short in the scale of eternity, this same ground would become a sprawling Corps-level field hospital. Thousands of broken bodies would be dragged here. Thousands of moans would rise into the rafters of the barn, drowning out even the cicadas' song. I paused at the edge of the lane, looking across the low stone wall toward the barn. Its doors stood closed now, locked in the serenity of evening. But in my mind's eye, I saw them flung wide, saw wagons creaking in under the lash of urgency, limbs dangling, faces pale, uniforms stiff with blood. I could almost hear the desperate voices of surgeons crying for water, for chloroform, for bandages torn from whatever cloth could be spared. The farm that now exuded stillness would soon bear witness to a tide of anguish that would stain its timbers and its soil. I leaned on the wall, my hands rough against the cool stone, and breathed in the scent of hay and clover. "Forgive us," I whispered to the barn, to the house, to the very earth. "Forgive us for what we are about to ask of you." The crickets played on, oblivious. Somewhere a whip-poor-will called, its mournful note repeating like a dirge. I thought of the Spangler family, their lives tied to the rhythm of planting and harvest, suddenly forced into the theater of war. Did they know, even faintly, that their farm would become a crucible of suffering? That soldiers with torn bodies would litter their fields, that their barn would echo with the saw's rasp and the scream cut short by chloroform's haze? Did young children peer from the windows, wide-eyed, as lines of stretchers approached like a grim procession of saints and sinners alike? It was said that more than 1,800 wounded soldiers would pass through these doors. 1,800 souls, each carrying his own story, his own home left behind, his own mother waiting for news. Some would leave this place with a stump where a leg once was, others with lungs that never fully healed. Still others would not leave at all. Their graves, temporary, hurried, shallow, would mark the orchard and meadows around me. Tonight, though, only the fireflies dotted the field, each blink a tiny lantern mocking the candles that would soon burn in vigil over broken men. I let my feet carry me closer. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. and the barn loomed larger, its timbers weathered but strong. My hand brushed the latch, though I did not lift it. The silence within felt sacred, as though the building itself already sensed what role it would play. I could almost hear the ghosts rehearsing their agony, the groans muffled behind the wood, as though time itself was thin in this place. The farmhouse stood a short distance away, windows reflecting the last light of dusk. I imagined Mrs. Spangler bustling in her kitchen, unaware of the destiny about to be thrust upon her. Perhaps she hummed a hymn. Perhaps she scolded a child for tracking dirt across the floor. She could not know that within weeks, her yard would be littered with the wounded, her orchard filled with the cries of the dying. War has a way of rewriting the simplest of domestic scripts. As I stood there, the first stars pricked open above me, bright against the deepening indigo sky. They seemed to watch silently, impassive witnesses to both peace and carnage. Did they know, I wondered, how many men would gaze up at them from stretchers on this very ground, whispering last prayers or begging silently for one more dawn? I turned westward again, resuming my walk. The road sloped gently, bordered by rail fences that cast long shadows. Behind me, the farm receded into the night, retreating into the safety of darkness until the day war would come pounding at its doors. Yet even as I left, the Spangler farm lingered in my thoughts. It stood not just as a waypoint on my journey, but as a symbol of how ordinary lives and places are dragged into extraordinary histories. A quiet barn, a family's land, transformed into a stage for human endurance and human loss. As I walked, I pressed my hand against my chest where the ache of memory lives. The war had not yet arrived, but already I could hear it in the silence between cricket calls, feel it in the chill that seeped into my bones though the air was still warm. Time folds upon itself here in Gettysburg. Tonight I walk in peace, yet my eyes see the shadow of battles not yet fought. I passed a stand of trees, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. The moon had begun its slow climb, pale and watchful, casting silver on the fields. I imagined the moon on those July nights when surgeons worked by its light, when its cold beams mingled with a lantern glow to illuminate tables stained dark. How strange that the same moon should watch over both serenity and slaughter with equal detachment. The road curved, and I caught one last glimpse of the Spangler farm behind me, its outline softened by distance. I lifted my hand in farewell, not to the buildings alone, but to the men whose cries would one day fill them. "Rest easy," I murmured, though I knew rest would be a rare gift in that place. The night had deepened, stars wheeling overhead in their eternal march. My walk was far from over. Ahead lay more homes, more landmarks that time had appointed for sorrow and endurance. Each step westward carried me deeper into the heart of Gettysburg, deeper into the tapestry of what was and what would be. The crickets kept their rhythm. The whip-poor-will sang again, and I walked on, a solitary figure straddling the line between evening's peace and tomorrow's storm. The night had deepened by the time my walk carried me farther south, and then bent me westward again, the path threading through fields that still clung to their summer greenness. The moon had fully claimed the sky now, washing the land in a soft silver that made every rail fence glow faintly and every stone wall gleam like it had been polished by unseen hands. I could hear the night creatures in their endless labor, the fiddling crickets, the chirring of unseen insects, and, from somewhere distant, the low bark of a dog warning shadows away from a farmhouse. My feet found the worn track leading toward a modest homestead, its outline growing sharper as I neared. The small house looked as though it had settled deep into the soil, content in its plainness, its white clapboard walls and low roof, unremarkable to the casual eye. But I knew better. This unassuming place, the Lydia Leicester House, would soon be asked to hold within it the weight of the Republic. I stopped at the fence line, resting my arms on the top rail, and let the quiet wash over me. The air smelled of grass cooling after the day's warmth, and of wood smoke faint on the breeze. A single lantern flickered in one of the windows, its glow faint but steady, as if Lydia herself had left it there to guide her children toward sleep. Yet no light could ever prepare this house for the storm of men and decisions that would soon claim it. It was here that General George Gordon Meade would set up his headquarters. In a few short weeks, these simple rooms would be crowded with officers bent over maps, their whispers sharpened by urgency, their pens scratching out orders that would send thousands forward or hold thousands back. The little parlor that now held only the dust of a day's work and perhaps a family Bible would be transformed into the beating brain of the Army of the Potomac. I closed my eyes and let the vision rise. Meade hunched at a table, candlelight painting his stern features. Staff officers moving briskly in and out, their boots striking the floorboards. Couriers would burst through the door with breathless urgency, bearing reports of Confederate movements, casualties, the state of the lines. Above it all, the steady thunder of artillery would shake the house itself as Confederate gunners sought to break the Union heart. How strange, I thought, that such history should be carved into such a modest dwelling. No marble halls, no grand chambers, just a farmer's home, its roof pierced by shells, its orchard torn by shot. Yet here, in these humble walls, the course of a nation would bend. I whispered into the dark, "General, did you feel the weight pressing on your shoulders as you sat here? Did you hear the voices of mothers, of fathers, of children in every line of ink you drew across those maps?" The stars above gave no answer. Their silence felt colder than the breeze now slipping through the fields. I turned from the Leicester home, leaving it to its temporary peace. The road bent gently, carrying me northward, then west again. The air grew cooler still, and I drew my coat tighter, my steps crunching faintly in the dust. Ahead, the shapes of town began to take form, clusters of roofs, chimneys rising like dark fingers into the moonlight. As I approached, the lane widened into Steinwehr Avenue, one of the arteries that threaded life through Gettysburg. The night here was different, thicker with scents of civilization. The faint tang of ale drifted on the air, the smell of horses stabled nearby, the earthy odor of brick and stone baked by sun and cooled by moon. The hum of the countryside gave way to the hush of sleeping homes, yet beneath it all lay a tension, as though the very street sensed the weight that would soon thunder down it. It was along this avenue that the Dobbin House Tavern stood, its stone walls rising sturdy and solid, set a little apart from the humbler wooden houses around it. The building seemed older than the rest, seasoned by years of travelers passing through, its face toward the road like that of a venerable sentinel. I slowed as I approached, letting my hand brush against the rough stone of the outer wall, cool, firm, unyielding. Tonight, the tavern slept, its shutters drawn, its hearth no doubt glowing within. Yet I could almost hear echoes of laughter that once filled its rooms, the clatter of mugs, the songs of men who'd paused here on journeys long before war's shadow fell across the land. But that laughter would not last. This house, this sturdy stone refuge, would soon be turned to a darker purpose. The Dobbin House would become a field hospital, its dining rooms transformed into wards, its halls into corridors of suffering. Soldiers would be carried across this threshold, not with cheer in their steps, but with agony in their limbs. They would be laid out on tables, once set for suppers, on floors, once polished for guests, straw scattered beneath them to soak what no human hand could stem. I could smell it even now, in the theater of my mind. The sharp sting of chloroform, the iron tang of blood, the acrid smoke of lanterns burning through the night. The walls that had once heard toasts raised and stories spun would soon reverberate with cries that could not be silenced, with prayers whispered in voices fading too fast. And yet, for all its horror, there would be compassion here too. Hands steadying the wounded, voices murmuring comfort, clergy kneeling by cots to bless the dying. The Dobbin House would bear both the mark of suffering and the balm of mercy, a paradox set in stone. I lifted my eyes to the tavern's dark windows. In my imagination, each pane flickered with candlelight, shadows moving behind them as surgeons bent to their grim work. I thought of the families who owned this place, how they must have watched their beloved home swallowed whole by war's necessity. Did they weep quietly in the corners? Or did they set their jaws and help bind wounds as best they could? A cart rattled somewhere far down the street, the clop of hooves carrying faintly. The sound seemed to underline my thoughts. Wheels rolling, carrying men or goods tonight. But soon they would carry the broken, the dying, the dead. Steinware Avenue would fill with wagons groaning under their human cargo, with officers hurrying on horseback, with the thunder of cannon fire so close the very stones beneath my feet would shiver. I stepped back from the tavern and let my gaze sweep along the street. Each building seemed to lean toward me, whispering its own secret, its own role yet to be played. Gettysburg was no mere town tonight. It was a stage waiting for the curtain to rise. Each house, each barn, each tavern cast in roles they had not auditioned for, but could not refuse. I turned my face westward again, the tavern fading behind me, its stone walls a memory, even as they loomed solid in the moonlight. Ahead lay more streets, more homes, each with its own fate. My feet carried me onward, slow and steady, through the cool hush of night. The crickets had grown quieter here, replaced by the soft sigh of the town asleep, yet I could not shake the echoes. The scrape of a surgeon's saw, the groan of a wounded boy, the shuffle of boots across a farmhouse floor. They followed me as surely as my own shadow, and I knew they would not leave me until dawn, if ever. Still, I walked, for this was my purpose, to bear witness, to trace these roads and these walls with the knowledge of what was to come. And as I left Steinwehr Avenue behind, I carried with me the memory of both laughter and lamentation, of both command and compassion. The Leicester House and the Dobbin House, two places so different in size and shape, yet bound together by the same thread of destiny. One would hold decisions that shaped the course of the Union. The other would cradle the broken bodies of men who bore out those decisions with their blood. And I, a solitary traveler in the night, walked between them, listening to their whispers, carrying their truths forward into the waiting dark. The evening deepens as I step westward, leaving the hushed fields behind and entering the pulsing veins of town. Baltimore Street stretches before me like an artery of brick and cobblestone, carrying the memory of horse hooves, wagon wheels, and booted regiments. The lamps here are lit, small, wavering flames perched in iron frames, casting halos that ripple against window glass. Their glow bathes the town in amber, a gentler light than the battlefield's harsh sun or the cold gleam of cannon barrels. But I know better. These lights will not last. The war will come pounding down this street, rattling shutters, shattering glass, and filling the air with powder smoke. As I walk, the quiet hum of crickets and cicadas is joined by the faint murmur of voices drifting from open doors. Families sit to evening meals, unaware of the shadows pressing against the edge of history. Their laughter feels fragile, stretched thin over the weight of what is about to descend. I breathe it in, this momentary peace, and I hold it carefully, like a fragile relic. Ahead stands the Shriver House, its red brick facade standing upright and proud, the kind of home that whispers of aspiration. George and Hetty Shriver built it with a saloon at the back, hoping for prosperity in this modest Pennsylvania town. Tonight, the windows are clean, lace curtains drawn just so, the porch brushed of dust. It has the air of a house prepared for guests, for community, for cheer. Yet I can already see the fissures forming, not in the bricks themselves, but in the story this house will soon inherit. For when war comes, this house will be turned inside out. Rooms meant for warmth and family will echo with groans of the wounded. The saloon in the rear will serve no ale, but instead, the bitter draught of suffering. Confederate sharpshooters will climb into its attic, pressing barrels through cracks in the brick to fire down upon Union soldiers. Each shot they take will rattle the house with violence, embedding the structure itself into the grim work of war. And when those sharpshooters fall, or are flushed out, blood will soak into wood meant for laughter and commerce. I can almost hear the pounding of rifles above me, the splintering of plaster, the shouted orders and accents drawn from the south. I stop at the stoop and rest my hand against the railing. The iron is cool to my touch. I whisper into the gathering dusk, "You will not remain a home, dear Shriver House. You will be conscripted into memory, your very walls sworn to testify. And testify you shall, for the echoes of pain will long outlast the laughter within." I leave the house behind, the cobbles tapping gently beneath my steps. The street curves subtly, drawing me onward. The shadows deepen, pooling at the corners of alleys where cats slink low and unseen. Above me, the sky bruises purple, threaded with streaks of gold surrendering to night. The lanterns grow more insistent, their light spilling further, pressing back against the tide of darkness that gathers like a silent army. A few blocks further, I reach the Farnsworth house, another brick structure, its roofline sharp against the twilight. This is a tavern, built for respite, for travelers who need a bed and a warm drink. Tonight, like the Shriver home, it looks innocent enough. A place where one might pause, share a story, and watch the town go by. But soon, this too will be conscripted. Confederate sharpshooters will claim its attic, firing at Union troops with relentless precision. The house will bear their legacy, its walls scarred with over 100 bullet strikes that will remain visible even decades hence. I pause on the sidewalk, gazing upward to the attic window where shadows press like watchful eyes. I can almost see the muzzle of a rifle, the flicker of fire in the dark. The air thickens here, as though anticipating the gunpowder to come. I know that sharpshooters will fall from this perch, struck by counterfire, their blood staining floorboards never meant to carry the dead. The tavern will become a sepulcher, its rooms haunted by groans rather than laughter. Travelers who once sought comfort within will one day stand outside, tracing fingers over bullet holes, wondering how a place built for fellowship could be turned into a fortress of death. I speak softly again, my voice barely a ripple against the night. Farnsworth House, you too will be scarred. You too will testify. Though you stand strong tonight, your wounds will never close. They will remain etched into brick and memory, so all who pass may read the cost. The street grows busier as I continue. More lamps glow, more voices rise. The smell of bread lingers in the air from the bakery's closing shop, mingling with the faint tang of horses and hay. It is the portrait of a town alive, not yet burdened by the war about to unfold. But I feel the tension beneath it all, a vibration in the stones themselves. These streets are waiting for boots, for cannon wheels, for the storm that will break them open. I pass shop windows displaying cloth, tinware, books, and candles. Each pane of glass seems fragile, trembling as though already aware of the artillery thunder destined to shatter them. A dog barks from behind a fence, its voice sharp and urgent, cutting into the soft evening calm. Perhaps it too senses the unease, for animals often know what men do not. I slow my pace, savoring each step, each breath of this evening air. I imagine the street when battle surges through. Soldiers crouched behind barrels, bullets tearing splinters from fences, cries echoing between brick walls. Civilians huddled in basements, praying, clutching children close as the world above them shakes. The thought is heavy, pressing against my chest, but I carry it willingly. This is why I walk, to remember, to witness, to honor. As the lamps flicker brighter, the stars reveal themselves overhead. First one, then another, until the sky is speckled with countless tiny fires. They seem to me like souls, already gathered, already watching, already knowing what dawn will bring. Their light is steady, unblinking, a sharp contrast to the fragile glow of lanterns swaying in the evening breeze. I whisper to them as I walk, "Keep watch, friends. Soon, the town will need you. Shine over the fields and streets alike, that no soul may pass unseen." By now, Baltimore Street has quieted. Families retire indoors, shutters drawn, doors bolted. The night belongs to travelers and those like me who drift with purpose known only to themselves. The air is cooler, touched with the damp promise of dew. My footsteps echo softly, a metronome keeping time with the distant chirp of insects. The Shriver House and Farnsworth House linger in my mind as I continue, their shadows walking beside me, their futures heavy on my heart. I imagine the day when tourists will stand outside, pointing, recounting the tales of sharpshooters and soldiers. I imagine children pressing their hands against old bullet holes, wide-eyed, trying to fathom what those days were like. The houses will endure. They will not collapse under the weight of memory. Instead, they will stand as monuments. Ordinary homes turned extraordinary by the violence of history. And so, I move forward, deeper into night, carrying their stories with me. For that is the duty of my walk, to listen, to remember, to honor. The lamps along Baltimore Street grow fewer as I continue westward, their amber halos flickering behind me like memory itself, warm yet retreating. The evening has ripened into full night now, though the sky still clings to its last traces of blue at the horizon, reluctant to surrender fully to darkness. A quiet stillness falls across Gettysburg, broken only by the soft creak of signboards swaying in the breeze and the faint hum of insects that seem emboldened by the cooling air. I move steadily toward the center of town, where streets intersect and lives overlap more densely. Here, the homes give way to shops and larger buildings, each one a marker of ambition and growth in this modest community. The cobblestones beneath my boots feel uneven, but they hold stories, each one worn smooth by the traffic of wagons, by the feet of farmers, by children chasing one another in play. They will soon bear the weight of armies, the frantic retreat of the wounded, and the pounding urgency of couriers rushing orders to the front. As I reach the square, the Fahnestock building rises before me, its brick form tall and commanding, a sentinel of commerce. Its windows glimmer faintly in the lamplight, reflecting fragments of the square like fractured memory. Tonight, it stands calm, just another structure, another business, its rooftop undisturbed, save by the occasional pigeon. But I can see beyond this calm veneer. In the days ahead, townsfolk will climb to that rooftop, desperate for a vantage point from which to glimpse the storm breaking over their homes. They will watch the smoke rising from the fields, the clash of men locked in fury, the sweep of battle lines shifting like tides. Fear will mix with awe, for to stand above it all is both blessing and torment. I imagine their breath caught in their throats as they peer eastward, trying to comprehend the scale of it all. Some will press handkerchiefs to their mouths to stifle sobs, or the acrid taste of gunpowder smoke drifting across town. And it will not only be civilians who find purpose here. Union General Oliver O. Howard will choose this building for his command post, directing movements with the weight of thousands of lives pressing upon his decisions. His presence will transform this ordinary structure into the very nerve center of command, where strategy is drawn against chaos, where words delivered swiftly may determine who lives and who does not. The walls will listen, though they will never speak of the burden they have carried. I stand across the street now, my gaze tracing the dark outline of its roof. A lantern glows faintly in a window, no more than a pinprick of light against the night. You too will testify, I murmur. Your rooftop will bear witness to desperation, your walls to the calculations of war, and long after, your bricks will echo with stories retold. I let my hand graze the worn stone of the street corner as I move past, my steps carrying me further along Chambersburg Street now, that artery stretching westward through the town. The buildings here shift in tone, some grander, others plain, but each with the solidity of permanence, though permanence is an illusion in times such as these. It is not long before I come upon the David Troxel House, another brick structure, modest yet dignified, its windows staring blankly into the night as though in quiet anticipation. To most, it is simply a home, a marker of family life, its hearth perhaps still warm from the evening supper. But to me, it is already scarred by what is to come. For here, an artillery shell will find its mark. Fired in the chaos of battle, its iron casing will shatter peace in an instant, tearing into brick and wood, shaking the foundation itself. What was once secure will become fragile, splintered, wounded. The house will survive, yes, but it will never again be only a home. Its walls will carry the memory of impact, the vibration of destruction reverberating long after the shell has cooled to silence. I pause before its door, the night air cool on my face. My mind conjures the sound, the sudden shriek of metal, the deafening crash, the cries of shock. I see glass shattering outward, curtains ripped by invisible claws. And I see, too, the aftermath. Neighbors rushing forward, faces pale, searching for survivors, hands trembling as they clear debris. Yet tonight, all is still. The Troxel family sleeps in peace, unaware of what fate has in store for their home. Children's toys lie scattered in corners. A quilt rests neatly folded at the bed's edge. A lantern's flame dwindles low in the parlor. Life hums quietly here, undisturbed. I envy them this moment, this innocence on the cusp of ruin. I whisper softly, "Hold your peace while you can, dear house. Tomorrow's fury cannot be held at bay, but tonight belongs to you." The street narrows slightly as I continue, the darkness pressing closer now. Most windows are shuttered, their occupants retired, though a few faint glimmers of candlelight remain. Somewhere nearby, I hear the gentle strains of a fiddle, a song played not for an audience, but for the comfort of the player alone. The melody drifts across the street like smoke, thin and bittersweet. Perhaps the musician senses the coming storm and plays to soothe his restless spirit. The night deepens, and with it, a strange stillness settles. It is not silence, for the town breathes. Dogs bark distantly, doors creak, the wind sighs. But it is a stillness of spirit, as though all know instinctively that change crouches at the edge of tomorrow. I feel it in my own bones, a tremor of anticipation, the sense of walking not only through space, but also through time, straddling what is and what will be. I glance back once at the Troxel house, its silhouette framed against the star-pricked sky. It looks ordinary, almost small in its quiet posture, yet I know its place in history will not be forgotten. For war does not only carve its mark upon fields and soldiers, It inscribes itself upon the very bones of a town, upon homes and hearths that once knew only laughter. As I resume my walk, I let my thoughts drift. I think of the families who will wake to cannon fire, the children who will huddle in cellars, the shopkeepers who will pray their livelihoods are not destroyed by stray shells. I think, too, of the soldiers who will march through these very streets, boots pounding, voices raised, some filled with courage, others quaking with fear. Their presence will transform this quiet town into a crucible of suffering and sacrifice. The stars overhead are sharper now, as though night itself has been cut open to reveal their brilliance. They guide me westward toward Seminary Ridge, where the land will soon roar with musket fire and cannonade. But for now, the road is calm, the houses hushed, the only movement my own steady stride. I breathe deeply, the night air cool in my lungs, and I carry with me the weight of what I have seen and what I foresee. The Fonsstock building, proud and tall, destined to be a watchtower and command post. The Troxell House, humble and unassuming, marked for ruin by a single screaming shell. Each structure transformed, each one pressed into the service of memory. I walk on, each step a quiet vow, to remember, to bear witness, to honor the stories etched into brick and wood. The air grows cooler now as I continue my journey westward, the last vestiges of sunset slipping completely beyond the horizon. A soft hush blankets the streets of Gettysburg, broken only by the distant rumble of the wind moving through trees and the occasional murmur of water in a nearby gutter. Shadows stretch long and soft, and my steps sound slower, deliberate, as if the earth itself wishes to preserve the quiet while it still can. Ahead, the land begins to rise, a gentle slope marking the approach to Seminary Ridge. The ridge itself is a subtle divide, yet it commands a view across the western fields, offering a vantage that will soon be sought by both caretakers of the wounded and men of war. The seminary building looms above the slope, its red brick glowing faintly in the last streaks of twilight, and I can see even now how it dominates the landscape, not in height alone, but in purpose, in presence, in quiet authority that will soon be forced into service. I follow the path that winds toward the entrance, my boots brushing against loose gravel, the sound crisp in the cooling air. The fields along the ridge shimmer faintly under the silver light of the emerging moon. Grass bends in the breeze, whispering secrets of what is to come, rustling with the promise of footsteps, both careful and hurried, of men arriving to rest briefly before facing chaos. Here, the ordinary will give way entirely to the extraordinary. The Gettysburg Lutheran Theological Seminary stands before me, stately and composed, its tall cupola piercing the night sky. From a distance, it seems untouched by concern, yet I know the future etched in its walls. This will be no longer merely a house of study, no longer simply a place of learning and reflection. It will serve as a field hospital, sheltering the wounded, whose cries will fill its lecture halls. Beds will be improvised, stretchers laid upon the floors where pews once stood, and the scent of antiseptics and fear will mingle with the lingering traces of candle wax and old timber. I pause at the base of the slope, letting my gaze travel across the open fields to the east. The land stretches quietly, past roads and homes I have already passed, each one carrying its own mark of impending turmoil. From this height, it is easy to imagine the pulse of battle. Men advancing, cannon thundering, smoke curling in ribbons across the land, obscuring what is near and distant. And yet, tonight, all is serene. The hush of evening holds the landscape in gentle suspension, as though time itself pauses here to let me linger a moment longer. I step onto the grounds, my feet crunching softly over gravel paths flanked by neatly trimmed grass. The seminary seems to exhale a quiet dignity, the kind that comes from centuries of purpose and study. I imagine the students who once roamed these halls, their voices carrying in debate, their footsteps echoing across polished floors. Each lecture, each prayer, each quiet meditation will soon be replaced by the measured urgency of triage, the controlled chaos of life and death decisions. The cupola draws my eyes upward. From that vantage point, Union soldiers will watch over the town, scanning the horizon for signs of the Confederate advance. The roof will bear weight it was never intended to support. Men balancing rifles, nerves taut, eyes wide, hearts heavy. They will witness what I now see in imagined stillness. The gentle fields and quiet homes that will soon be etched with the sounds and scars of war. I wander slowly along the side of the building, past its large windows reflecting the pale light of the moon. The air is still enough that I hear the faint rustle of animals in the nearby woods, the soft creak of a branch swaying in the night wind, the distant trill of a cricket. Everything alive now seems fragile in comparison to what the seminary will soon endure. Beds of grass outside will serve as temporary resting places for the wounded. Horses will be tethered near the steps, whinnying softly in discomfort. Men will lean against the walls, heads bowed, praying, weeping, or simply gathering courage for the hours to come. I reach a small stone fence marking the edge of the seminary grounds and rest my hands upon it. From this vantage, the layout of the battlefield is clear. The rolling fields, the tree lines, the roads weaving between homesteads. Each path that now seems tranquil will soon carry men in uniforms, some marching in formation, others fleeing in retreat. Cannon fire will carve the landscape, creating temporary landmarks in smoke and ruin. And this seminary, steadfast and resolute, will become the silent guardian of suffering and endurance. I imagine the transformation of its interior, the lecture halls repurposed into wards, makeshift operating tables lined up beneath windows, their glass rattling with distant blasts, the scent of burning fuel and the tang of blood mixing with the old wood of the floors. The students' desks and pulpits will give way to stretchers, medical instruments, and the groans of soldiers whose bodies bear the brunt of conflict. And still, within this transformation, the seminary will hold its dignity, offering refuge and perspective even as the world erupts around it. The slope beneath the ridge begins to darken fully now, the shadows growing long and thick. I take a slow step forward, my hand brushing a branch as I move past a young sapling near the edge of the grounds. In a matter of hours, this quiet hill will resonate with the thunder of musket fire, the shouts of officers, the rapid steps of couriers, and the pained cries of the fallen. I shiver, not from cold, but from the weight of what will unfold here, the profound transformation of peace into peril. I pause at the front entrance, imagining the doors swinging open not for students, but for stretcher bearers, nurses, and surgeons. Men in uniform will carry the wounded inside, their faces tight with concern and exhaustion, their hands steady with necessity. Candles and lanterns will line the corridors, casting flickering shadows over rows of wounded soldiers. Commands will be shouted, orders repeated, prayers whispered. Here, amidst the organized chaos, human courage and fragility will coexist in a fragile, fleeting harmony. The cupola catches my eye again, the pale light tracing its lines. I picture Union soldiers stationed there, their eyes scanning eastward, alert to the faintest movement of the Confederate approach. The ridge itself will offer strategic advantage, and yet it cannot shield them from the randomness of battle, the unpredictable strike of artillery, the swirl of smoke, the sudden rush of enemy forces across open fields. From this high point, one can see both the beauty and the brutality of the landscape, its duality laid bare beneath the night sky. I move slowly along the side path that leads behind the seminary, where the ground begins to slope toward the western edge. The air smells faintly of pine and fresh earth, the scents mingling with the cool touch of evening. My hand brushes the rough stone of the fence again, grounding me in the reality of this place, in contrast with the visions of what is to come. It is a reminder that the ordinary, the calm, the familiar, will always be shadowed by history's inevitability. Turning back toward the building, I allow myself one final moment to absorb its presence. The seminary is more than a structure. It is a repository of memory, of quiet resolve, of human endeavor. It will endure because it has been built with care, with intention, with patience. And in enduring, it will testify to those who come after, telling the story of a night when a peaceful hill became the anchor for both suffering and hope. The wind picks up slightly, carrying with it the scent of the distant past and the faint whisper of what has yet to happen. I let the sounds of the night fill my ears, the rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the faint clop of a horse's hoof against stone. In these small details, I find the heartbeat of the town, steady beneath the looming weight of history. I step back from the fence and take a deep breath, filling my lungs with the night air. The stars above shimmer with quiet brilliance, indifferent to human struggles, yet somehow lending a sense of permanence, a quiet reassurance that there is still continuity, still a world beyond the immediate chaos to come. And so my steps carry me away from the seminary, down the slope, through the fields that will soon host the thunder of battle. I glance eastward one last time, imagining the stories already told in brick and wood, in fence and cobblestone, and those yet to be written in blood and courage. The town sleeps for now, oblivious to the approaching storm. Yet every building, every field, every path bears the promise and peril of history waiting to unfold. I pause at the edge of the ridge, feeling the soft chill of evening settle over my shoulders. It is a quiet moment, a stillness that contrasts with the chaos soon to engulf these fields. I close my eyes for a heartbeat, letting the silence fill me, letting the weight of memory and anticipation mingle. The seminary stands tall, the ridge wide and enduring, the horizon stretching both toward what has been and what will come. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.